How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. Yeah.
Where were you before?
At Scarborough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone, hello.
It's always something.
Soldier.
Okay, I'm just waiting to see if we can get, I guess, global news. Is that who's here tonight? Yes, okay. Good evening, all. Thank you so much for taking the time to come out here to participate in all our civic duties. And thank you very much to our incredible four mayoral hopefuls who have taken the time out to join us tonight and to engage with you, on the last leg of a very, very exciting and grueling campaign. So this is really wonderful. My name is Anna Serrano, and I'm President and Vice Chancellor of OCAD University. And before we begin, I think it behooves all of us to really fully understand that at OCAD University, we are situated on the ancestral territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabeg, and the Huron-Wendat, who are the original custodians of this land upon which we are engaging in this very important conversation. And we are super grateful to be able to gather on this land this evening. So especially since, as you know, this event was scheduled for June, and I'm super pleased that we were able to redo this event and that you could all come tonight. Before I turn this over to the designers of this event, FoNTRA and FoSTRA, I just wanted to say a few words on why OCAD-U was so enthusiastic in saying yes to hosting this event. I believe that universities have an important place in society to foster dialogue and debate on issues that extend far beyond the classroom and the corridors of our buildings. And I say this because our students, many of whom are here in this audience, are discussing issues that are affecting them and our society on a daily basis, from climate change to lack of affordable housing, to mental health, to protecting our democracy. And they are doing more than just talking. They are putting their passion to purpose, their knowledge into action, to develop creative and innovative solutions. If you had come to our annual graduate exhibition in early May, also known as GradX, you would have witnessed firsthand just how our students are addressing some of the city's pressing problems. And as a vibrant community hub, OCAD-U is an active partner in city building initiatives, like the redevelopment of the Canada malting silos at Bathurst and Queens Quay, or the redesign of public areas at City Hall or Nuit Blanche. Or, as some of you may know, like our deep involvement in Canada's annual Democracy Exchange Summit held earlier this year. We have designed this event, this annual summit, with our partners, Toronto Metropolitan University's Leadership Lab and Brookfield Institute, and the Open Democracy Project, where attendees, including many students, participated in very important conversations about how we must all work collectively to take meaningful action to
University. to meet these challenges through strengthening the contributions of residents and their communities. So who are we? FoNTRA and FoSTRA are two aligned federations with over 60, and our combined areas are home to over 1 million residents. We help to provide a voice for Toronto's many diverse communities, for homeowners, renters, and other residents. So what's our catchment areas? So FoNTRA is bounded by Shepherd to the north, the Don Valley Parkway to the east, Bloor to the north, and Bathurst to the west. Now, over to Rick Green, the chair of FoSTRA, who will tell you about their boundaries and more about our organizations.
Thank you, and good evening. FoSTRA's catchment runs from the Toronto Islands in the south to Bloor and beyond in the north, and is bounded in the east by the Don River and the west by the Humber. While our member RAs focus on more local issues, we support broad objectives and take actions at the city and even beyond, such as advocating for a livable, workable, and affordable city by introducing an appeal to bring back universal rent controls for all properties in Ontario and supporting complete communities enjoying sufficient infrastructure and public realm. Supporting well-planned development while respecting the past by making thoughtful submissions on planning applications and policies, as well as submissions to the provincial government to return planning controls to the city and its residents, to reinstate much-needed development charges and community benefits, and to develop a fair and more accessible community of adjustment process. Promoting strong, healthy, and diverse neighborhoods by advocating for better definitions of affordable housing that are based on income levels as opposed to a percentage of market rates and the recognition of their differences. Supporting reductions to impacts of climate change by championing sustainable environmental programs, preservation of green spaces and tree cover, and zero waste, and by opposing provincial efforts to encroach upon the Greenbelt and plans to privatize Ontario Place. We strongly support the democratic rights and responsibilities of residents to be involved in their city's decision-making on a wide range of matters. But recent provincial legislation has removed much of our ability to meaningfully contribute to the city's planning process. So as you respond to the questions tonight, candidates, we're very interested in hearing how you will help us regain our rights and also ways to strengthen the involvement of residents in the city's decision-making process. Tonight's moderator is Nicole Swern from Third Party Public. Nicole is a skilled facilitator who has been working with communities in Toronto for over 20 years. Her focus is to help communities together and to connect with public sector decision makers to the constituents they serve. Nicole will now review this evening's format. Nicole, over to you.
Super. Thank you, Rick. And it's really a pleasure to be here and a joy to be here with a bunch of people that really care, all of you, about our city. And having been lined up to go on June 1st, it's really a pleasure that everybody was able to make it work to come back on June 22nd. So thank you. My job, for those folks that don't know us at Third Party Public, is really to not advocate for outcomes. That's not our job. Our job is to make space for many different interests to come together to try and discuss what happens between elections. Not during an election necessarily, but between elections. How do we work together? And there's never one public interest. There are always multiple. And how do we negotiate between those? And so in the spirit of sort of revealing my role here tonight is not to advocate for an outcome or any particular candidate, but to help make space to hear from all of them. And so we can all hear, learn, they can hear and learn from each other, and the broader city can hear and learn as well. In terms of how the evening is going to unfold, the questions tonight come primarily from FoSTRA and FoNTRA, some from OCAD-U. Those are the questions that we knew in advance. For those of you who have already participated, we also have cue cards where you can write down a question if you want to ask the candidates something. We already collected a whole bunch. There's a team from FoSTRA and FoNTRA working through them. And once we've gone through the set questions, we will move to the questions from the audience. The questions from FoSTRA and FoNTRA are in 8 theme areas, and the candidates are aware of these theme areas. The first 2, we think are a little new compared to what's been covered on the campaign so far. The first one, clearly, how do they work or envision working with resident associations? Not only the homeowners, but also the tenants and also the co-op, people who live in co-ops and all of the other, some of the people who are experiencing homelessness. How do you work with everybody? And how are you going to do that? How will you govern, again, in between elections? The third theme is financial challenges. The fourth, jurisdictional autonomy. Then public safety, infrastructure, rental housing, including student housing, we're at OCAD-U, and supporting the arts. We will rotate who goes first, and we're going to start pretty easily, left to right, from your left to right. The first candidate gets 90 seconds, and then every other candidate gets 30 seconds to respond. And they can respond by agreeing, disagreeing, or adding something else. We also have 4 personal interest questions that we're going to throw in, because the FoSTRA FoNTRA people said that all of you and all of them would like to get to know these candidates a little bit better. So we'll see. But we're going to start with 3-minute opening remarks and close off with 1-minute closing remarks. And in between, I'll remind us of that structure. But I need your help for one thing. So the FoSTRA FoNTRA folks said, they gave me license to run this like we would run public meetings. And those of you who know me, that's 20 years of public meetings. So people take turns. They don't talk over each other. They have immense respect for all voices. They don't personally attack each other. And they stay within the time and topic that is proposed. So that's the only time I'm going to say it. You can choose to follow my lead or not, but that was really the spirit in which we wanted to have the conversation. So you're not talking and debating over each other. We'll make sure I will make sure that I protect the time. And when the time is over, there's a clock here that the candidates can see. Right now it's at 3 minutes. When the time is over, I'm going to do this bell sound, and then you guys are going to clap. On the off chance that they're still talking, you're still going to clap, and I'm still going to ring the bell. So let's just try. Pretend the time is done. I'm going to ding. Time is up. Because that does a couple of things. It stops people from talking, but in a very friendly way, an affirming way. And if you don't like it, you know it's going to be over at some point, and if you love it, you're going to want to clap. So hopefully it works for everybody. All right? Okay, let's try it. I think that's it. I won't keep it so structured all of the time. I will protect the time very closely, but I might mix up a little bit about the order of who's speaking. And if you want to talk, just make a note to me, and I'll keep a list. Right? Okay. Hopefully that's it. We will collect the question cards from you at 3 times. We'll collect them at 7:30, 7:45, and 8 o'clock. By that time, no more questions. So you can see Thomas up here with his hand up, Ruth, hand up, other folks with their hand up. They will come. If you need a card, put your hand up, they will deliver you one. If you need a pen, they will deliver you one. If you have one that's completed, put your hand up, they will collect it from you. All right? Okay, and I think we're going to have a night. We might have some additional guests. For now, we have some empty seats. If we do get additional guests, we will figure out how to integrate them into the process. All right, I think we're good to go. Brad Bradford's going to start us off with a 3 minutes opening remarks. Chloe Brown, Mitzi Hunter, Josh Matlow. I'm going to deal with the bell. You will deal with the clapping. We're very much looking forward to tonight. Thank you very much. Brad, over to you.
Over to me. Thanks very much, Nicole. And I liked all that applause. That was a really nice vibe in here. Folks up in the 500s up there, we see you too. Thanks for coming out tonight. This, I think, is probably the finale of the mayoral campaign debates, and appreciate OCAD and FoNTRA and FoSTRA and everyone rescheduling us to the back half of June. That was unfortunate, but we're all here tonight, and that's really good. And it's important, so thanks for showing up. My name is Brad Bradford. I'm the city councilor out in Beaches, East York. I'm here tonight in my capacity as mayoral candidate in the 2023 unexpected election. And I'm running for mayor because I want less talk and more action at City Hall. This has been an amazing opportunity. I approach it with humbleness and great humility to kind of go across all 640 square kilometers of this big, beautiful city and hear directly from Torontonians. And I hear time and time again that they are tired of waiting. They're tired of waiting for housing that they can afford. They are tired of waiting for the Eglinton Crosstown to open. They are tired of waiting in the traffic and the congestion on our streets. They're tired of waiting to see Main Street recover after the pandemic. And all of that stuff goes back to City Hall. Now, a little bit about me. I've always been passionate about cities. I grew up in Hamilton. Don't hold that against me. But I've always loved cities, and that's why I went to school for urban planning. I'm trained as a professional planner. That's my passion. And after a career in the private sector working on transit projects, I was down in Massachusetts doing some renewable energy. I landed at the big show in the chief planner's office here in the city of Toronto. And that was my first exposure to the bureaucracy and local government. And, you know, for me, I saw a lack of accountability. I saw divisional silos, and I saw that pervasive attitude that whatever doesn't get done today will get done tomorrow. So that kind of frustrated me, a bit of a frustrated optimist. So in 2018, I decided to run for council. I was successfully elected to the good folks of Beaches, East York. And once I got on council, I kind of saw more of the same thing. Endless debate, deferral, delay, which is holding our city back. Those conversations on this mayoral journey have been really important to me. It's never have I had more crystal clarity about what the priorities are and what we need to be delivering for Torontonians. The city has never been more expensive to live in. For most people, the biggest bill that they face every month is their housing costs. It's either their rent or their mortgage. Rents are going up, and so are interest rates, and so people are challenged on a cash flow perspective. Community safety. People don't feel safe riding the TTC right now. Carjackings are up. People don't feel as safe as they used to in Toronto. And lastly, gridlock. It makes it harder to get into work. It takes longer to get home to your family at the end of the day, and the city has ground to a halt. I am running for mayor to deliver real results, less talk, more action, and things that will make a tangible difference in your life. Looking forward to it.
I'll deal with it. Don't cut it. Good. We sorted that out. We won't do that again. The mic will not be cut off. Don't worry. But because your clapping is going to have to out volume them. So this is the team from OCAD has been fantastic. Omar and Nick and Saida and the all like Lewis, and there's a ton of people helping, and all the FoSTRA people too. So let's roll. Good. Over to you, Chloe.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chloe Brown. I am, sorry. My name is Chloe Brown. I'm a policy analyst at Toronto Metropolitan University, where I work with students of all ages. I work with people as young as 18 years old, starting their first year at university, and I help them navigate their choice of studies, and I help students as old as 60 who come back for a second wave of education. What I'm focused on as your candidate is to build democratic access to the same resources that I had that allowed me to be on this stage. As a student, I have dedicated 4 years of my life to learning public administration and governance. For the last 10 years, I've worked frontline services and delivering education, employment, and training programs to learners of all ages. And I see that the deficit is not in our capacity to learn and do. It is in the counselors who constantly take our consultations and never implement them. I am a policy analyst that has a record of implementation, and that is through the people that I've helped to get jobs. While I may be one of the younger candidates, it doesn't mean that I don't have the experience to deliver for the working class. And this is where, as a candidate, I've tried to differentiate myself by constantly talking to the people that are suffering the most. And it's us. It's seniors that are contemplating whether or not to deplete their retirement or up their insurance in case of emergency to provide for their children. It's young people like myself that are actually entertaining leaving the city because there's no opportunity for us here. And it's not because we haven't been trying. It's not because our labor hasn't been squeezed out of us. It's because we haven't been trusted with our own resources. We have a trust fund in the public service. We pay for public land, we pay for public data, and we have revenues that are sitting in a reserve not being used to solve the problems that we have today. And this is where I'm putting myself forward, not just to gain power as the mayor, but to raise your capacity for leadership. All of you are active shareholders in this corporation that is called Toronto, but you haven't been given fair access to control your lives. And for these reasons, I am focused on raising dignity, equality, and freedom in public service by making you co-creators of the future of public services. As a policy analyst, I can give you my knowledge of working with different levels of government. I can give you my millennial experience of working with technology to create an easier solution for getting things done. As the candidate that's been running for a year now, I have been showing you as an example of what can be done if the community comes together to support an idea. And for those reasons, I'm asking you to vote for me, because Chloe Brown is only here because of the goodwill of everyone here who has worked and sacrificed and put their time into this public service. So let me pay my time back by being your mayor. So vote Chloe Brown on June 26th. Thank you.
All right, Mitzi.
Thank you, Nicole. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank OCAD U for hosting us and creating and holding space for quite some days, actually, for us to gather here to have this really important conversation about raising the voice of residents at City Hall. I think it's such an important perspective and frame on this mayoralty debate. So thank you to FoSTRA and FoNTRA for taking the time to ensure that this conversation is had tonight. So I am Mitzi Hunter, and I grew up in Scarborough. I'm a kid from Scarborough, and I'm in this race because I strongly believe that we need to bring the outside into City Hall, that it is time that that voice is heard at the city level, and that we see the city from all perspectives, all four corners of the city. I want to make sure that Toronto experiences a revival as a city that works for everyone in every part of our city. Coming out of COVID, we see that there are so many challenges that are visible in our city, whether that is more visible homelessness with people who are sleeping on our streets or in our TTC system, living in ravines, and in temporary hotels. That might look good on the outside, but as soon as you enter, you really see the challenge that we face. And I had that experience. I remember going into one of the temporary hotels at Kennedy and 401, the Delta. And it used to be called the Renaissance Hotel. And I remember that because I had a small business, and I used to take my clients there because it was like the best hotel in Scarborough, in the East, really. And there were 450 people unhoused that are now living there. More than half are seniors and elderly people. At a time when they should be enjoying their retirement years, they are precariously housed. And we know that many of these temporary hotels that are housing people are taking back those facilities to put it back into the use that it was intended for. So what's going to happen to those people? Many are at risk of ending up on our streets. We know that our city is experiencing a housing and an affordability crisis. That too is something that is visible. I talk to young people who don't actually have a thought of living here. And that's the talent that we need to retain to ensure that we have a thriving city. So that's why I'm in this race. I've spent most of my life doing city building and devoting it to public service, and I want to be the mayor to lead that revival now. Thank you.
Josh, over to you.
Well, hi everyone. By the way, I'm going to sound like Al Pacino tonight. My voice is strained, but my energy is strong. And but I wouldn't miss this for the world, and I'm so happy to be here at long last. My name is Josh Matlow, and I'm running to be your mayor. My focus has been throughout this campaign and throughout my time as a city councillor on ensuring that our city is livable, safe, and affordable. One that includes every part of our city, including those who often feel forgotten. And I also believe that the status quo has not been working for us. We have a premier who believes that selling off the Greenbelt is something that should be a gift to his donors rather than our kids. It is. He wants to privatize our waterfront and hand it over to a private Austrian spa rather than a public waterfront. He wants to move the Science Center away from Thorncliffe Park and Flemington Park, away from kids who rely on it for education, local residents who rely on it for jobs, and he didn't ask a single person before he made the announcement, along with one of the other candidates. It's wrong. When it comes to planning, we no longer can be just having fights over every single building that's proposed. Our planners should not be reactors. They should be forward planning. They should be looking at entire communities. And it shouldn't be a debate over one building versus another. It shouldn't even be about buildings. It should be about how to build a complete community. One that has, yes, affordable housing and services like school capacity and childcare and infrastructure and parks and a great quality of life for those who live there today and those who will move there tomorrow. I want a city hall that is resourced to be able to do the job that's expected of it. We have a $1.5 billion shortfall. The former mayor, John Tory, raided the reserves using the undemocratic strong mayor powers through the budget process. So now we've been left with a problem. We need our snow, I was about to say competently cleared, I just mean cleared at all. The parks maintained. Rec programs available for our kids. And yes, to address the homelessness emergency that we have in this city. But we have to get real about how to do that. Yes, we're going to have to increase property taxes. Not by a radical level, but at least 2% above inflation. That's $5.55 per average homeowner. Yes, we're going to have to manage the budget better. And yes, we need a new deal with the province and the federal government. And with 5 seconds remaining, I'll conclude. Thank you.
It seems the system is unfolding as it should. Your remarks are provoking people to put their hands up for cards with questions, which is perfect. Everybody's on time. Let's keep rolling. The first question, Brad gets 90 seconds and then 30 seconds to each of you follow, and I'll just go that order until we get in the swing of it. So the first question, the topic is working with resident associations. So there's a bit of a preamble here. Voting every 4 years is one way we can participate in influencing how our city is governed. A lot happens between elections that influences how we allocate our collective resources according to, ideally, our shared values. As you know, there are multiple public interests, and finding common ground between them is a challenging task. There are many who are losing confidence in government's capacity to stay connected to and guided by the people they serve. FoSTRA and FoNTRA and the 60 individual resident associations that belong to the two federations are very interested in understanding what leadership will you show as mayor to strengthen the role of residents in helping the city meet the challenges we face today. 90 seconds, over to you.
Very good. Well, FoSTRA, FoNTRA are really best in class in the city in terms of organization and capacity building. And I see many of you familiar faces from your deputations at Community Council and at Planning and Housing Committee, but that's only one way of engagement, right? And the real engagement, it's not the 5-minute deputation at City Hall, it's in the community and showing up and having those conversations, boots on the ground, on site, having those discussions is where we can really get important community input, whether we're talking about our parks or our community centers or new developments that are coming forward. Believe it or not, my first sort of introduction to the big civic conversation here in the city of Toronto was through the work I was doing in city planning, but then in my own community, I signed up and got involved with the Danforth East Community Association. So I actually was sitting in those chairs doing that type of work. And what I loved about DECA at the time was it was a community association that was there to support the type of change that we wanted to see in the neighborhood, not just oppose it. And so as our city goes through transition, and we are going through transition, leadership is about managing change, and change is hard. But we are best guided when we have the input and the insights from folks in the community. And I can tell you when I was in the bureaucracy, the other thing I saw is the best decisions are not made in the two towers of City Hall. The best decisions are made when they are informed by local input. You know your streets better than I do. I always work with the community.
Thank you very much. 30 seconds to each of you. Chloe will go in this order.
Yeah. In Germany, there is a co-determination bylaw that is used to implement 50% of workers on all board of directors that are involved in government and private services. And I see this being an opportunity to make sure that the city's agencies, boards, and corporations have working class representation. So making sure that 50% of board of directors are workers, and then the other 50% of supervisory roles ensures that every level of income is being included during the decision making of public services.
So the voice of residents associations is so essential in shaping our communities that we live in. And in my plan, I have included different ways of hearing from you, using online surveys, really interacting, using some technology tools so that we can hear more, not less, from residents associations in advance of decisions being made that affect your lives and your communities. And that's something that's extremely important to me and will be a focus as mayor.
I slipped. Sorry, I was writing. Josh.
My approach as mayor will be the same as it has been as a local councillor. You're not just going to be figuratively at the table, you're literally at the table. When there are decisions that affect your lives, you should be involved in that conversation. And in fact, the more that you inform, I find that better results happen. You know, my local residents association, FoSTRA, is well known at City Hall for being thoughtful and engaging and a contributor to better results.
Okay, let's go reverse back to front. Our first quick question, just for fun, 15 seconds each. What two values do you think are the most important in public service? Two values that you think are the most important in public service. 15 seconds each. Two values. Starting with Josh and going this way, backwards. Thank you. It's a group effort.
So I'd begin with empathy, recognizing that you also don't always have all the answers and the ability to listen to others. And then determination to bring all the right people to the table to arrive at a result.
All right, empathy and determination. Mitzi.
Okay, so how my approach is, of course, to listen, but I also see what are the gaps, what are the solutions that are needed, and then bringing people together to solve that and taking action. I've had the pleasure of doing that in my community in Scarborough for 10 years.
Two values you think are most important in public service.
Adaptability, you'll always be coming across things that you're not sure of and that may be conflicting to your original beliefs, but it's an opportunity to learn and do better. And then lastly, I would say conviction to your values, because having conviction will keep you solid and grounded.
Two values, most important in public service.
These are all really good answers here.
Yes, they are, and you're last and it's hard.
Empathy, because you need to understand where people are coming from and recognize that we all have different experiences, and accountability. You got to own the decisions and you got to deliver results for people. That's what it's about.
All right. Good. So, Chloe, you go first on the next topic, how you will govern. And we have a few questions in this one, but I'm just going to start with the first one and then we'll move on. So there are many opportunities for promotion in this campaign, and as we get closer to Election Day, we're turning our minds to how our new mayor will govern. A certain percentage of people vote, others don't. A certain percentage of people will vote for the eventual winner of this election, and many votes will also be cast for candidates who will not win. How, as mayor, would you represent all of Toronto, including and especially those people that may not have voted for you?
The foundation of democracy is to serve everyone, so I would stick to that conviction and essentially just continue my work as a policy analyst where I go out and I get to know people. I adapt my rigidity to be flexible to the stories that they will tell me. So it's really about approaching governance as a lifelong learner. People will come with their stories, they'll come with their biases and experiences, but that doesn't mean that they're not capable of learning. And I've learned this particularly with mature learners where they may have had a bad experience with the educational institute in their youth, but there's an opportunity to change their perspective of what they're capable of doing. So my approach to governance is really treating everyone like a lifelong student because there's always a possibility to learn, grow, and adapt your practice. And then lastly, when it comes to governance, treating it like it's a temporary thing for me, because the truth is, like, there's only 3 years in this term. I don't want to do this forever, nor should someone want to do this forever, because this is how tyranny begins, by the concentration of power. So making sure that there's a all ages mentorship program and an all ages stewardship program so that more people can come onto the boards, they can learn things, pass them on through generations, and stewardship can evolve with every generation that is in touch with public services. So thank you.
So for sanity, I'll go in the same, Mitzi, Josh, and then Brad. We'll stay in the same circle. Now you have 30 seconds. How, as mayor, would you represent all of Toronto, including and especially those people who may not have voted for you?
So one of the first commitments I made was to not use the strong mayor's power. I believe that that is undemocratic and it diminishes the voice of the locally elected councillors and representatives at City Hall. I also have said that I would bring the city council meetings out to the former boroughs so that all councillors can see what it's like being in Scarborough, being in Etobicoke, being in East York, and of course they're always downtown, but that's walking in the shoes, walking the talk.
Yeah, I've learned so much visiting literally every neighborhood in this entire city, literally. And I recognize that there are different viewpoints, there are very unique differences, there are a lot of commonalities as well. But a healthy democracy is when we actually have disagreements. If we don't have disagreements, we don't have a democracy. So my job is to represent every single part of the city, no matter one's views, but to make sure that they're heard.
As mayor, how would you represent all of Toronto, including and especially those that may not have voted for you?
I suspect there will be a lot of people who don't vote for me, but that's okay. I'm still running for the job. Look, Toronto is a city of neighborhoods, right? And that's what's so great about it. It's the most diverse city in the world, and like the other candidates, we've spent the time to go out and hear from all those different voices and learn those perspectives. I don't have to be the smartest person in the room. Often I'm not. I learn a lot more from listening to other people, and then that filters into the leadership decisions, moving the city forward, but doing it collaboratively, collectively. That's what's important.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so Mitzi, you start off this one, 30 seconds, everyone else. It's again under how you will govern, and there will be one more after this about how you will govern. So this one is, the mayor's mandate is for 4 years, and this came up already in one of the answers. The mayor's mandate is for 4 years, in your case 3 years, and then we will have another election. However, we know that many changes and many projects take longer than 3-4 years to be realized. Would you advance a project even if you knew that it would make it a bit harder for you to be reelected? And if so, how?
Yes, absolutely. So I've been elected for the last 10 years in Scarborough, and there are many initiatives that I've started in that community that successive governments have completed. An example would be, I noticed, my thing is to see what is not there and to connect it. There wasn't a medical school in our community. And I asked the principal of UTSC, why do we not have a medical school in Scarborough? There's one in Mississauga, there's downtown, of course. And it started an important conversation, and now we are going to have a medical school. It's going to open in 2028. It's going to bring valuable healthcare opportunities to our community. As the former Minister of Education, the same thing. Who is not graduating? We have an excellent graduation rate. And when I asked that question, turned out it was Black students, Indigenous students, students with disabilities, 2S LGBTQ students. So we put in place an Equity in Education Action Plan to tackle that. The secretariat that I put in place is still in place today. Even under the current government, it's still doing that important work. So we have to work together to identify what needs to be fixed and bring others along with us. It doesn't matter if it outlives me. What matters is if it solves the issue that we're trying to solve. And that's what leadership is about. And as mayor, that's how I will lead.
Great, so I'll go Josh, Brad, and then Chloe, you're getting the drift. How would you advance a project that you know, would you advance a project that you know may make it harder for you to be reelected, and if so, how?
By showing leadership, not just hiding behind. By thoughtfully articulating the arguments for what you are trying to do and bring people into the conversation. And I find that most often, you know, I do fairly well in my local elections, and not everyone agrees with everything I do. But they do understand why I did it, and they trust that I did it for the right reasons because I involve them.
You know, as I said earlier, leadership is about managing change, and change is hard. I've done this in my community. I did it as a first-term councillor when I brought forward and advanced and built 59 supportive housing units, because people can't live in parks. They need the dignity of a roof over their head and wraparound support so they can be successful. But I can tell you, as a first-term councillor, that was not easy. But I did it because it was the right thing. You know, and there were a lot of people that pushed back on that very hard. But when you're in these positions, you have to do the right thing, even if it's not the popular thing.
Would you advance a project that you know may make it harder for you to be reelected? If so, how?
Yes. So one of the things that I've been thinking about is community land trust and converting Toronto community housing into land trust properties that are owned by the residents. It might be unpopular because some people believe that government should be owning the land that housing should be on, but I believe that people should own their land to develop on. I would just manage this by giving people the training and capacity to work with developers to move these projects forward, because 25 councillors have been blocking this progress.
All right, so we went round the last question, and Josh, you're going first on this one. That's right. Name 3 strategies you would use to work with this city council. All of you know who's on council. You've got them. 3 strategies, and try and be specific, that you would use to work with this city council. You've got a minute and a half, and then we'll go same order.
Of course, that's going to begin with me. So the first thing that I would do is do something that I wish a mayor had done with council before. After the election, I would sit with every one of my colleagues. And I wouldn't, just tell them to do something because they've got to be part of the team. I'd ask them, what is your passion? What are you here for? What do you want to achieve? And what does your community expect you to do? And empower them to play a leadership role on that file or that issue, so that they are genuinely enthused to fulfill our mandate rather than just sort of go along to get along because they just want a committee appointment. I think that's incredibly important because that's how you build a real team and real loyalty. I would also make sure that I put people on committees where their acumen actually contributes to the benefit of our city, rather than simply political appointments to exchange favors, the way that it works today, frankly. And then lastly, I would make sure that even though Doug Ford gave those undemocratic strong mayor powers, that I would include council in decisions that even legislatively I can make unilaterally. I'd make sure that they're engaged in those decisions, such as the city manager, because they're gonna have to work with them. And I believe by leading that way, by including council that way, that even if we disagree on a certain number of things, we'll always find what we need to work on together and get it done.
And given the complexity of the question, I think I'm just going to extend this one to 60 seconds for each of the rest of you, because otherwise you're not going to fit much in 30. So let's do 60 seconds. Brad, go ahead. 3 strategies you would use to work with this city council. And you know this council well, too.
No, appreciate that, and appreciate the extra 30 seconds there. So like Josh, I think it's really important to understand the priorities of the local councilors. Each, as I said, it's a city of neighborhoods, and each ward has a very distinct feel and needs, and nobody knows that better than the local councilor. So hammering out those priorities. Then we're gonna have monthly touch bases. We're going to have a monthly meeting where we are talking about those priorities and what steps need to be taken to accomplish that. I know as a local councilor, I was consumed with delivering for my community. That was my job. You wanted to have those wins. And so a monthly touch point with the mayor to make sure that we are working together to help that local councilor be successful for the community. That's good for me as the mayor as well. And then lastly, mayor's mandate letters. It's a little bit different, but having mayor's mandate letters for all of our division heads and leaders of every agency to hold them to account on delivering for Torontonians, public, transparent letters that you can all see so that the civil service delivers for you.
3 strategies you would use to work with this city council.
Make their promises transparent to the public and have an open tracker for following up with them. You can order a Domino's pizza with better transparency than you can get from public services. Secondly, make them do more than the bare minimum of their jobs. I've heard so many candidates reciting the basic functions of government and looking for a gold medal. This is not how work is done. We have to make them go above and beyond basic customer service and actually step into governance, and that's really what's lacking here. After the popularity contest is over, there's no willingness to do the development of the citizenry. That means giving them access to classes, courses, co-working spaces, workshops, no more consultations, actual workshops, so that they are pushing these ideas forward, and when we give them the money through participatory budgeting, they're the ones spending the budget and implementing the changes, because council needs to create better citizens for future leaders.
It does start with listening. I met early on as I was doing my listening with councillors, with Councillor Lily Chen, and she talked about Cummer Station and the fact that this station was not part of the capital plan or the process. It was just sort of left out of the development. And I thought that was wrong. We needed to have that in Willowdale, and I've included it in my fully costed plan with my priorities for investing in more public transit. I think that's a really essential part of this. Everyone has been elected by local communities, and they need a mayor that will listen and support local priorities. The mayor also has to do the heavy lifting, get the resources, shape money from other levels of government. I'm just coming off of resigning my seat at the provincial level, and there's a lot of money there, whether it's healthcare for homelessness and for mental health support that we need to get, whether it's for affordable housing or for transit projects, making sure the mayor is the biggest champion of all.
All right. Another quick question. I was just looking for it. Maybe Mitzi, you want to keep the mic, and then we'll just go the other way, just so we stop getting dizzy. We'll go just for these 15 seconds. Tell us something about you that would surprise us. I didn't do it. The FoSTRA team did it. Tell us something about yourself that would surprise us.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
So I was born in Jamaica, grew up in a family with 3 brothers, 2 older and 1 younger. And my younger brother grew up to be 6'7", and he did play professional basketball.
All right. Something that would surprise us.
I'm doing vermicomposting. I got a bunch of worms on my balcony.
There we go.
There's like 100 of them, and I'm really proud of their progress.
Ding. All right. Brad, yeah.
I was raised by a single mother who raised 3 kids on her own. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, and so when it came to sports, I wanted to play hockey, but we thought that was too expensive, so she put me in figure skating, and I figure skated for like 12 years. It was kind of expensive too, but that's how I got there.
All right. Josh, something that would surprise us.
In my early 20s, I was an actor. Which my friends will tease me that I haven't really stretched it much, given that I'm in politics. And I did some commercials that I'm so glad YouTube wasn't around, because it would be used against me now.
Okay. All right. So, candidate number 3 gets to start. Here we go. I think we were doing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 anyway. So, Mitzi, let's start with you again, and then we'll move around. We'll do the same thing. Where and how? Okay, the city of Toronto faces significant financial challenges. Where and how will you raise the funds the city needs to ensure it thrives? As part of your response, it would be helpful to understand what revenue strategies do you think are the most fair for all Torontonians and why? So where and how will you raise the funds the city needs to ensure it thrives? As part of your response, it would be helpful to understand what revenue strategies you think are the most fair for all Torontonians.
Okay, so this is the critical question, and I know that everyone here, we need to hear from all the candidates about how they will pay for the things that they're talking about in this campaign. I have put forward a fully costed and funded plan, which is available on my website. It's also available in a 6-episode podcast that you can listen to in 7-minute increments. And the foundation of that is a 3 and 6 property tax, 6% across the board, which is similar to what the current council has put in place at 5.5. I realize that there's an affordability crisis, and people are struggling to put food on the table and keep a roof over their head. So those with household incomes of $80,000 or less, they would pay less at 3%, so 50% of that rate. They will be eligible for a rebate for that. For seniors, a household income of $80,000 and less, similar. They would be exempt from property tax, or they can defer it. Small businesses as well. We want to make sure that they thrive and continue to operate and create jobs. They would be exempt, as well as those in the creative sector. I believe that we also need to advocate with other levels of government, and I've already started to put out there that cities deserve 1% of the HST so that we can have a better and fairer deal for cities. I also have other revenue tools that I have added into my plan that you can download.
Okay. No, let's go that way again. Yeah, Chloe. And then we'll go Brad and then Josh.
So my revenue plan for the city is to really remove a lot of the redundancies and duplications that I see with programs and services. Additionally, I would like to expand the tax base by using mixed-use development and modular construction and design to rapidly develop more housing solutions for a variety of more users. So like essentially helping more people get off the street and into jobs is a really big thing, making sure that more workers can come back to the city with purpose-built rental and using the air rights above community assets.
All right, great.
Okay, complicated question. We are in an affordability crisis. I am not prepared to ask people to pay more. people are fighting to put food on the table right now, and it's hard out there for a lot of folks. Maybe some of us can afford to pay more taxes, but a lot of folks can't. I will keep taxes at the rate of inflation or below. We have to work with other levels of government to get expenses that we've been paying for off the books, like the 30% of refugees that are in our shelters and all the work that we do on the province's behalf. And I'll move forward with open tendering on public contracts, save us $200 million a year.
We're going to need a new deal with the provincial and federal governments to be able to ensure that we can operate transit, build social housing, and make sure that refugees are settled safely and humanely in Toronto. We need to make sure that we manage our budget better, do better on many infrastructure projects that we're wasting money on now, including the way that the East Gardiner is being rebuilt. And we need to make sure that we, yes, get honest about the revenue we need, and frankly, if we don't raise taxes at least slightly over the rate of inflation, you know what I was going to say.
Okay, good. Chloe, you want to start off the next one?
Sure.
Good. And then Brad, you can go the next one after that. So Chloe's going to start, and then we'll do the same rotation. We'll do 4 one way, 4 the other. We'll try and stay in balance. It picks up on something Josh was just speaking about, jurisdictional autonomy. Almost 20% of Canadians live in or around the city of Toronto, and the Toronto region generates 20% of Canada's GDP. The FoSTRA residents have 2 questions, and we'll just stick with the first one. Do you think Toronto needs more jurisdictional autonomy from the other 2 orders of government? Why or why not?
I would say no, because I grew up during the Quebec referendum, and I think governments can work together if they're aligning their missions and their mandates together. As a policy analyst with the federal government, there are agendas that every ministry has. It's about aligning our public services and programs to meet those missions out. The reason why we're not getting money from other levels of government is because we have no proven plan on how that money is going to be spent effectively. There's been decades of City Hall promising projects and taking money from the feds, the provinces, and then not delivering them. We need to have better worker representation on public boards so that we get transparency and accountability on the reasons why, from the worker level, these things are not working. And this is where I really am focused on mirroring the federal ministries and making sure that our goals align with theirs so that it's easier for them to stream money into the city. An example of this is the healthcare funding that was provided to the province and then taken back after Ford failed to deliver on his promises. There's an opportunity here to take into a variety of federal funding programs and build mixed-use developments and leverage environment and climate funding, healthcare. There's an opportunity to leverage seniors funding to make sure that they can age in place and that healthcare services are on the ground level of their building. But it's really about knowing the government and what they want so that we can deliver and be aligned.
All right, thank you very much. Good, 30 seconds. Brad, over to you.
I think what matters is how we work together. And if you go back to 2018, we have seen major changes at the province, and things are now done to us as a municipality rather than done with us. Eglinton Crosstown, you don't care who's building it. It's the province, by the way. You don't care, though. You just want the transit to open. You want those businesses back online, and you want to be able to get to where you need to go. We need to work together with the priorities, but sometimes it feels like other governments have taken us out for dinner and walked out on the bill. We can't keep holding the bag for other levels of government.
The question is, do you think Toronto needs more jurisdictional autonomy from the other 2 orders of government? Why or why not?
Yes, we need a city charter. We need the ability to actually have a real local government, like cities throughout the United States and around the world to have. We should have control over our governance, our land use planning, and our finances. The go-along to get-along approach with Doug Ford and our other levels of government have not worked. Mayor Tory got strong mayor powers, but we received a weaker Toronto. We need a strong Toronto to be able to deliver for the citizens of the city.
Thank you. It's 30 seconds still, right? Good, just checking. We're all on the team
I'll take the minute
thing.
and 30.
We can make it 10 minutes. No, go ahead. Mitzi, do you think Toronto needs more jurisdictional autonomy from the other 2 orders of government? Why or why not?
it's just, I know it's not going to happen. Cities are creatures of the province, and you can see that in the way that Toronto is being treated by this current government. As MPP, I introduced ranked ballots for city elections, and as part of a former Liberal government, it was implemented. Doug Ford canceled that. He cut City Council in half in the middle of an election and continues to Bigfoot over Toronto. As mayor, what I would do is raise a stronger voice on behalf of the citizens of this city so that we can get our fair share from other levels of government.
This next question is a little connected, so Cly, maybe we'll make them all 30 seconds and just go kind of fast. So there's a couple, and we'll start with Brad and we'll do the loop again this way. So we'll go Brad, Josh, Mitzi, Chloe. How would you deal with the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford? 30 seconds.
I would work with the Premier in the way I work with my council colleagues, and I would work with the federal government. You know, I actually had an opportunity to have a Zoom call back in the pandemic to work with the Premier and the Minister of Finance at the time to introduce a new small business sub-tax class for Main Street mom and pop shops. And that was a 15% property tax reduction, so we stopped taxing mom and pop shops at the same rate as downtown office towers. But we need a new deal for transit. We need a new deal for housing. And I will be a strong mayor of action to push back against the province and fight for Toronto's interests. So work together when we can and push back when we have to.
How are you going to deal with the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford?
I'm going to demand that he treats us as a partner. You know, you don't bring a handshake to an arm wrestle. And the way that Doug Ford behaves is like a bully. And anyone, including our former mayor, who believes that he's not going to roll you over when you treat him like a buddy is delusional. That's what he does. We need to make sure that we have a strong position, we negotiate from a place of strength, and he will know that when I'm at the table, there's going to be 3 million of us at the table negotiating for transit, social housing, and a new deal for Toronto.
Well, Nicole, I have gone toe-to-toe with Doug Ford on a lot of issues in the provincial legislature. What I do know as Toronto's biggest champion is that the mayor has to work with other levels of government and identify priorities. That is exactly what I have already started to do. Doug Ford owes Toronto $101 million for COVID expenses. He can take it out of the $22 billion reserves that he's sitting on rather than spending it in healthcare and in education, because the citizens of our city need that investment, and that will be my job, is to defend our city.
Wonderful.
So the federal law, the Constitution Act of 1867, dictates the relationship between the feds and the province. We can leverage the law to bring down Doug Ford. There hasn't been a lawsuit yet that he's won, and this is where it becomes really important for us as a community of people to hold Doug Ford to the rules of democracy, which is no one is above the law. If he's withholding health care, shelter, we can bring him to court, and we should be doing that. At the end of the day, Doug Ford has a very limited time at province, and we need to remind him.
Last question on the governance, the jurisdictional autonomy. I'll start with Josh and go all the way across to Brad, and then we'll go back in the other direction again. So you've all mentioned it one way or another, including tonight. What are your views on the strong mayor powers? It would be helpful to understand if you foresee any conditions under which you would use them. And if so, what would those conditions be?
I don't like them, and I won't use them.
Okay, next. You don't need to use the whole time.
Okay, I'll add one more point, and this is why. Especially the one about minority rule. There is no democracy in the world where the minority overrules the majority. In fact, that is the antithesis of democracy. Shame on them from ever bringing that to Toronto or any other Ontario municipality. I wouldn't just disavow them. I would advocate to get rid of them.
So, no, I would not use them. I've said that very clearly. I'm running to bring the outside in, and this is not democratic, especially for local democracies. I want the councillors in Etobicoke and Scarborough, North York, downtown, Midtown to have voice and to have say. And so I would not use them under any circumstances, and I fought against them as a provincial MPP.
Doug Ford could choose to take those strong powers away. It's not really a real thing, to be honest. And the truth is that objectively, if council was actually focused on meeting its goals, we wouldn't need strong mayor powers. If council was actually focused on empowering residents to see out small and medium-sized projects and funding them to do so, we wouldn't need them. So I don't really acknowledge the strong mayor powers because I'm objectively focused on getting my job done.
All right. Brad.
Variety's the spice of life. I would use them. I would be a strong mayor of action. I think Bill 3, having the control over the budget, that's important, setting those priorities, just like a minister of finance at other levels of government. You should do that. I think having the top civil servants and making sure you have the right people in the job with the same urgency that I have to move things forward, that's essential. And when it comes to housing, transit, and infrastructure that supports growth, we can't afford the delay that has become the hallmark of this city. I will move projects forward by working with my colleagues and the strong mayor powers if necessary.
Okay, great. So we started a little bit late and we gave everybody a little more time. So Yulia, I think now is the moment for any final questions, or we've collected them all already? Yeah, we've got them. Okay, good. So we're going to, by 8:30, get to the stack of questions that we've got here and start working through them. So what I'd like to suggest is we do 1 minute first response and 30 seconds quickly after for each of these. First, public safety. We're going to start with Brad, and we'll keep in this circle. We'll go Brad, Chloe, Mitzi, Josh, and it's just 1 minute. So we'll just more quickly get to the questions, of which there's a huge stack. FoSTRA and FoNTRA residents see public safety issues daily in the media, whether they be gun or knife violence, TTC attacks, pedestrian and cyclist deaths, auto thefts, or deaths in the street of those among us who are homeless, experiencing homelessness. They also see climate change as a public safety issue. These residents would like to know, in your experience, what types of initiatives are most effective at ensuring public safety?
It's a comprehensive approach. These are complicated issues. The context matters. There's no one solution. You know, you see it on the TTC right now. If you go down to the subway station, everybody's backs are jammed against the wall because they're afraid they might end up on the tracks. If your kids take the TTC to school, you are texting before they get there and when they arrive at school. People aren't riding the TTC because they don't feel safe. My Safe TTC Now action plan has 4 points to address that. Platform edge doors, an increased security presence at the stations and on the network, but also vitally, mobile crisis response teams so that folks who are experiencing homelessness or mental health crisis can get the help when and where they need it on the system. And that's what we need to see built out across the entire city. More of that, because frontline officers are not social workers, they're not marriage counselors, they need to focus on frontline police work, which means we also need to have the resources providing mental health counseling and crisis support for when folks need that as well. Neighborhood police officer programs are essential, rebuilding trust with the community. We need to do more of that also.
Thank you very much. Chloe, what types of initiatives are most effective at ensuring public safety?
The types of initiatives that are most effective are the ones that fund everyone who's not the police. Currently, we have a $1.3 billion police budget, and we're no safer than we were a decade ago. And that's because we're underfunding social workers, healthcare workers, ECE workers. We need to make sure that we're providing them with purpose-built rental and giving them access to affordable rents. If we ever mean to retain and attract talent back that it is involved in public services, it's building them into the community so that they're working with community members to create public safety.
All right.
Okay, so this is, I mean, it's critical. People have to be safe and feel safe in our city. And, you know, I unfortunately have attended 2 high schools in my community where students were shot and killed. And not once did they say, I want more police. What they want is more investment in our young people so they don't have to end up in a life that involves picking up a gun ever. And so that's something that I will focus on, even simple things like expanding the public library system, making sure we have youth hubs, things like that.
Go ahead.
The police should be doing what they do best. We need to finally invest in the root causes of violence in our society, including youth at risk, mental health, trauma, and ensuring that people have the supports they need along with access to housing. We need to make sure that we design our roads to be safer, because safely designed roads means safer people. And I have the only platform that actually has investment in finally having dedicated funds to support our climate crisis action plan, Transform TO.
Very quick question, no timer, one word. One person who had a very big influence on you in your life. One person. Brad, go.
My mom.
Good.
Sorry.
Okay, Mitzi, then I'll come back. Go, give me one person. You can wing it.
Okay, I thought of my grandma Eva. She brought me to Canada from Jamaica.
Molly, are you still up or are you in bed? My daughter.
One person.
Sorry, Batman. I love a good detective.
Okay. There you go. There you go. Okay. Mom, Batman, grandma, daughter, family. Really important to all these folks. Okay, great. Let's move on. Infrastructure. Chloe's up first, then we'll move around the group. Topic 6, infrastructure. In terms of how we spend the finances that we do have, there are many competing demands, from significant infrastructure projects such as maintenance of the Gardner to addressing the deteriorating conditions of our roads and sewers, the need for affordable housing and green spaces, protecting our existing rental stock, building more. What infrastructure investments do you think are the most important for Toronto, and why? And we'll give them a minute each. Minute and then 30 seconds each.
Okay. I think the most important investments are community land trusts, in which tenants associations, community groups are working together to advance nonprofit development. I also think modular construction and design are important, because I was just at a modular construction expo. There are houses being put up in 2 to 9 months. There is an opportunity with technology to rapidly develop structures and make sure that people are getting off the street and housed. There is an opportunity also to be looking at how technology can advance our road construction practices. I would like to ensure that more young people and more middle-aged people are being upskilled and being funded to deliver these programs. We have small and medium-sized contractors that are not being properly utilized. And this is where I would like to work with communities to create leisure, arts, culture, and entertainment zones. I would like to identify various community assets that we can build on, like the libraries, TTC stations, so that we can expand the revenue base and make sure more people are contributing to the tax base.
All right, thank you very much. Mitzi, infrastructure investments you think are the most important for Toronto, and why?
Well, Toronto's infrastructure is crumbling, and you can see that. So we need to invest more in our infrastructure. I have a complete plan that's available on my website. Affordable housing is the centerpiece of my plan. I would set up the Toronto Affordable Housing Corporation to unlock public lands to build more affordable housing that's real family 2-3 bedroom housing units across the city, and also investing in public transit to get our transit moving and get our city moving, including new projects like the North York Scarborough subway extension from Downsview to Shepherd.
Good, thank you very much. What infrastructure investments do you think are the most important for Toronto, and why?
We need to better maintain our parks. We need to reverse the cuts to the TTC and expand the network. We need to ensure that we build truly affordable housing, including rent-geared income, and on our city properties, we can actually have rent control, even though Doug Ford got rid of it elsewhere. We need to invest in the infrastructure that people rely on in our neighborhoods to keep up with the pace of growth.
Wonderful, thank you. Mitzi, no, Brad, you're next, and then we'll move over, and then you're going to go first on the next one. Go ahead. What infrastructure investments do you think are the most important for Toronto, and why?
The most important things very clearly are housing and transit. If people can't afford to live in this city, then the future success and prosperity of Toronto is gone. I remind the federal government all the time, housing is infrastructure, and the Canadian Infrastructure Bank ought to provide long-term, low-cost financing so we can build housing for the workforce of the future. And transit. Transit is access to mobility, and mobility is access to opportunity. Eglinton East, Shepherd, Waterfront, LRT, people got to move and we got to build it.
All right, thank you very much. Mitzi goes first on this one. Question 11, we're making our way through. They had a lot they wanted to ask, so we continue. Is Billy Bishop necessary? Lease expires 2033, or should alternative uses for the land be considered, such as parkland, green space, Indigenous Cultural Center, etc.? 1 minute and then 30 seconds for everybody else.
Well, I mean, when I did my MBA, you don't have to have an either or, you can have both. I think we do need to have the airport that is there because it allows us to have access to the downtown, and that efficiency is important. The tunnel has been built, so we've solved that issue in the past. We also need to make sure that we have space for parks, and in my plan I have 1,700 acres of parks that will be part of my affordable housing program, and that could include over in the island as well. And of course, our Indigenous communities need to have access to great public spaces. That is also part of my plan. 20% of the investments in the multi-unit residential acquisition programs will be for Indigenous housing. So I see that is something that is important as well. But let's not have an either or, we can have both.
All right. Josh. Is Billy Bishop necessary, or should alternative uses be considered?
Yeah, a lot of people rely on Billy Bishop every day to commute to work, and a lot of people enjoy the proximity to where they live. That being said, though, there's no way that I'd ever support allowing jets there. And I am, and I think we need to monitor that and make sure that we are very clear as a city that if the tripartite agreement is opened up and reconsidered, as it will be eventually, and especially if there's a new prime minister, God forbid, you know who I'm talking about, that we need to stand strong to make sure that we support the residents who live along the waterfront.
All right, there we go. Brad, Billy Bishop necessary?
I think it would be nuts to get rid of the Billy Bishop Airport. Has anyone been to Pearson lately? Not good. Like, Billy Bishop is nice to have, and I know a lot of people really rely on that. But in terms of opportunities for additional park space, programming, things that we could do differently, let's take a look at the exhibition ground. The majority of those buildings are only used 17 days a year, and it's just a massive expansion of parking lots. And so I think Exhibition Place is lots of opportunity for us to reimagine and do more for the people of Toronto with those lands.
All right. Chloe.
So Porter's already moving to Pearson, so there's not going to be a tenant there. Just shut it down, make it a park, and then expand the waterfront experience. So to build on what Brad's saying, the exhibition board has been wasting our time and not really using the exhibition for a full space. If you leverage a federal impact assessment on Ontario Place and block the injunction, you could develop an urban park at Ontario Place and expand the waterfront. It's really about bringing down the federal powers on Doug's development.
All right. Lots of creativity. Wonderful to hear from you all. I'm going to accelerate the last few so we can get to this big stack. So let's give everybody 30 seconds. We're really going to get really top of mind. Josh, you're going to go first, and then we'll go Brad and around. So this, we've got a couple quick questions on rental housing, including student housing. The housing crisis has been well covered during debates. Nonetheless, there are a couple of specific points they want to raise. How do you plan to ensure tenants' rights are protected, and would you propose any changes to Airbnb? Those were the two together.
So I've always stood up for renters' rights. I believe that it's important that, and I actually initiated a program called Rent Safe that goes after the worst landlords. Not every landlord's bad, but the worst landlords who don't care about the health and safety of tenants' homes. We also need to make sure that people have support when they're facing an unfair above the guideline rent increase, and I'm going to be expanding and supporting funds for them to be able to get to the board and be able to protect themselves and have the expertise, and much more.
Go. How do you plan to ensure tenants' rights are protected? And would you propose any changes to Airbnb?
Does this include the student housing? Were you teeing that up?
I'm teeing that up.
Okay, so don't do student housing.
No, student housing is coming.
All right. Okay, got it.
Sorry, that's how it goes. There's two here, and that's how it goes.
Understood.
Good,
Got it.
thank you.
30 seconds.
Yes.
50% of the residents in this city, of course, are rentals. We need to do more to protect rental rights. City Council has recently brought in a program to work on rent evictions where you actually have to have the building permit in hand before you can ask the tenant to leave. But there's a lot more work that we have to do. It's no secret out there, changes with the provincial government, rent control has made it very difficult for us, back to the autonomy of the city. But we also need to build more rental, because with less than 1.5% rental vacancy in this city, there's a bidding war on every rental unit. We need to make sure folks have access to housing.
How do you plan to ensure tenants' rights are protected, and would you propose any changes to Airbnb?
Okay. So as a tenant, I'd make the metrics for rent safe actually relevant to tenants. Right now, rent safe only looks at the outside of buildings, fire system, and mechanical, so therefore it's failing at tracking the rent evictions of tenants because it's not relevant. Furthermore, I would implement community land trusts to give more tenants opportunities to move from rent gear to income to rent to own programs. Therefore, they're buying their unit and they're creating leverage. And then lastly, I would work with the federal government to change the requirements of CHMC. Sorry.
Okay,
CMHC.
thank you very much. CMHC, perfect. Okay, Mitzi, over to you. Tenants' rights protected, propose any changes to Airbnb.
So I have a comprehensive plan to protect tenants, including an advocate that would be there to help to defend tenants against predatory and bad landlords. For the actual housing units that are being rented, there are many being sold and turned into private condos, those types of things. I have a $100 million fund that would allow the purchase of those for co-ops, nonprofits, and community land trusts, and also just preventing evictions. So having rent banks tripled, things like that.
Okay, great. Josh started on the last one. Brad, you're up. Another 30 seconds. What would you do to ensure housing affordability for young people? So this is especially from OCAD. We're here, students, especially students and creatives. What would you do? 30 seconds.
I've done more as the chair of planning and housing in the past 5 months than we've seen in 5 years. A big piece was multiplex, so that we could have neighborhood-oriented apartments, duplexes, triplexes, more rental opportunities for more people in more neighborhoods. I believe in that. I think that's very important. But we also need to be more flexible in our planning regulations. There's a great example of TMU being held up for months and years trying to build affordable housing for rental. City planning said no because the zoning approval didn't accommodate student housing, i.e. units that would be appropriate for students. We have to be more flexible.
How would you ensure housing affordability for young people, especially students and creatives?
I'd work with students to develop a publicly facing registry system for rentals. There's nothing like that exists. Right now, you have private companies using property technologies to take your data, but they rarely create services. Making sure that the City of Toronto is leading the development of a tenants program that actually connects them to all the resources that they're entitled to would be the first step, and then working with schools directly to make sure that they're building affordable housing because they cannot take in students without housing them.
All right, thank you.
So within my plan, I have specific student zoning around the 5 campuses across the city so that we can build student housing closer to campuses, and that would free up housing elsewhere for families. I'd also draw your attention to the yellow belt issue. So having a $100,000 forgivable loan for those who want to take advantage of the multiplexes and create additional affordable units within the home, that is also part of my plan.
As part of my Public Build Toronto plan, we're going to ensure that there's, again, a combination of rent geared income, deeply affordable to your budget, below market, and then market to help pay for it, but it'll be rent controlled. That can be built on city lots and properties nearby where we have schools. Obviously, we need to work with every educational institution to understand what their needs are before we just sort of say this is what we're going to do. And then I'm going to end with the last 2 seconds. Look up home share. It's a really great idea.
Chloe, last one from this group, and then we're going to go through this big stack of questions that we have right here, and you're going to stay here until the next few days, and we'll work through them. We're going to be wrapping up at 9. But the last question from the FoSTRA, FoNTRA, and OCAD U group is focusing on arts, and we'll do 30 seconds for each again. 89% of Torontonians believe that the arts and culture sector make Toronto a better place to live, work, visit, and create. However, the creative sector was hit very hard during COVID and is taking time to recover. If you're elected mayor, what actions will you take to support the creative sector, especially emerging creatives, to ensure its full recovery from the pandemic and future success?
So like I mentioned earlier, I would like to use the Community Land Trust to work with the Tenants Association, community groups, the labor unions to actually build housing on public lands for workers. One of the biggest things that we can do for creatives and workers in this city is build on top of libraries and create artists in residency programs, writers in residency. There's so many big opportunities to build on top of the existing assets and give them space so that they can work, live, and play with the people that they're meant to serve.
Okay, thank you.
So our arts and culture sector is what is livable in our city. It's our city soul, and we have to support the arts and creative workers. That is part of my plan. It's actually one of the 6 priorities that I have for a vibrant city. Sharing in the increase in taxes that we have, it's $10 million that will be going to the arts sector, and also positioning Toronto as a global creative city and investing in arts workers as well.
I'm going to achieve our culture plan. I'm going to achieve our festivals plan. I'm going to be raising the per capita investment into the arts by 2%. I'm going to make sure that we put the 2% increase from the hotel tax towards the arts and culture sector. I'm going to champion Canadian, Toronto-made production, television, film, and theater around the world and in this city. Arts and culture invest in our soul and into our local economy, and it's going to be a core part of what I do.
All right, thank you very much.
I work directly with the performing arts community to provide them a pathway back to performance out of the pandemic. I brought live music to our patios for the first time in Toronto. I have a track record of working with the arts community to support our artists and add vibrancy to our neighborhoods. But when I talk to local arts organizations, they say it's a nightmare to work with the city because of all of the process and the bureaucracy. We will make it easier to flow those dollars to those community organizations that are doing great work. And I also will stand up live work units on our main street so you can have a studio space and somewhere you can afford to live.
Okay, with such a stack, what I'm going to suggest we do is everybody, we're not going to get everybody to talk to every single one. We're just going to work through them and see how it goes. Maybe I'll start with you, Brad, just for the sake of structure here. And do you support densification in predominantly single-family home neighborhoods? 30 seconds.
Absolutely. We need to end the exclusionary zoning. We need to add gentle density and provide more housing opportunities for more people. It's the equitable and right thing to do in this city.
Great. The Ontario line, transit line, will connect Ontario Place and the Ontario Science Centre. What is your position with respect to the Therm Spa proposed for Ontario Place and the Science Centre there too?
So I want to kick Therm to Woodbine. It's in Doug's ward. It just makes more sense at the Woodbine Fantasy Fair than it does at the at Ontario Place. Additionally, I'd like to put in the federal impact assessment to protect species and the Great Lakes. I would like to put up a Great Lakes Research Institute in the Sinosphere and the pods and make sure that the lakefront is clean.
1 in 4 Indigenous peoples in Toronto are food insecure. In addition to what is already outlined in the city's recommendations, how would you address this issue?
So the food bank has come to the point where it's almost run out of food, and affordability is a huge issue. I was in Etobicoke recently with seniors. They brought this up. They can't afford the inflationary price of food. And so as part of my plan, I will increase the budget for the community supports program, looking at school nutrition programs. Affordable housing still remains the answer, making sure that people have access to affordable and deeply affordable housing as part of my plan.
Will you support term limits for elected municipal politicians?
Please.
Will you support a 2-term limit?
No, I just find that such a silly red herring. You know, these things come up once in a while. I'd rather, well, it's just how I feel. Of all the governance reforms that we need, I'd rather people be able to elect the person that they actually choose rather than get stuck with somebody who just happened to be there because the person that they really wanted couldn't.
All right. You get a mixed reaction. Let's go back the other way. So, we'll go to you and then we'll go to Mitzi. How would you approach the complex problem of homelessness that afflicts an ever-growing number of people? People experiencing homelessness.
In 30 seconds.
Yep. Highlights.
Because, well, the answer isn't simple. It is complex. The reality is we need to make sure that there's more outreach workers, that there's improved shelter spaces, and, frankly, more capacity. But that's the Band-Aid. There also needs to be a pathway with rental supplements and many other initiatives that I've got on my website to be able to ensure that people have access to a roof over their head. The way to solve homelessness is to make sure people have a home.
Are you prepared to support the Canadian Federation, we're getting specific with some of them, are you prepared to support the Canadian Federation of Students in our fight for free education? This is you're knowledgeable on this file. Over to you.
I'm very knowledgeable on this file as the former minister responsible for universities, colleges, and skilled trades. I have to say, and I've said this to the association, that this is not something that I support. However, I am part of the former government that provided free tuition as part of OSAP, where people who required supports to have post-secondary access to education receive that, and that's something that I would champion and certainly encourage and support.
Thank you. Another question related to Indigenous voices. I want to know what your plan is with respect to Indigenous Torontonians, including the Medicine Wheel and Indigenous office at the city. Just in general, how would you be planning to work with Indigenous Torontonians?
I would incorporate the Indigenous ways of knowing into programs and services. Additionally, I would work with development corporations of Indigenous groups to develop structures in the city. Making sure that there's access to Indigenous medicine gardens in our parks is also really important. And lastly, rezoning land so that we're having urban farms and markets to make more culturally appropriate food available for them. Can I just have a timeout to get rid of this water that I've been drinking? No, I gotta go.
Oh! Serious one, because not all the people here today are necessarily representatives or involved with resident associations. And this question is, how will you ensure that resident associations are not the only voice at the table over the voices of future residents, future tenants, and the unhoused? How will you make sure that not only privileged voices are listened to?
We have to find new ways of communicating and engaging. I mean, it's the same folks that always show up for the 7 p.m. meeting in the bottom of the church basement, and you hear from the same community members all the time. And the reality is, we're building community, we're building housing, we're making investments, not just for the folks who live there today, but in fact, the folks who will live there tomorrow and the years ahead. And it is about having a generational perspective. It is thinking about the young families, the new Canadians, and the seniors who want to move into these neighborhoods and finding different ways to meet people where they're at. Our approach to consultation needs to evolve.
Josh, Mitzi, and then maybe Chloe will be back. Otherwise, I'm going to skip to Brad. And it's a tough slog. 2 hours answering questions, paying attention. Thank you. Question: how important is it for you to maintain a vibrant space for French language in the city, and what will you do to support French-speaking communities?
Je crois que c'est très important, tout à fait. La population française en Toronto, c'est une population avec le droit à parler la langue française parce que anglais et français, c'est important pour tous les Canadiens. So I will, as mayor, make sure that French Canadians, people who speak the French language, have all the rights that they deserve in this city.
These two are very similar, and it's related to housing. And what progress on affordable housing can realistically be made in the remaining mayoral term? And if you can refer to delivering on the city's housing TO 2030 plan, that would be helpful. But what progress do you think can realistically be made in the remaining mayoral term?
Yeah, so I definitely, and I've looked at the housing TO plan quite closely, and I respect it. I love the focus on housing for women and the relationship that the city has developed with the federal government to bring more dollars into building more affordable housing. This is the centerpiece of my plan, to build more affordable housing. I will start that on day one, first by proclaiming there's no more surplus land. Everything available is going to be assessed for its potential for building affordable housing. 22,700 units of affordable housing in the first phase, which is going to be 6 years.
Hey.
Do you think that the current policing policies are effective at reducing crime?
No. No. As someone who takes the TTC every day, I can absolutely say that having more police has not brought down the violence or the mental health that I see a lot of people struggling with. So I want to invest in more public health as a means of achieving public safety. Because if you can help get more people off the subway and out of places that they're not stabilized, you can actually help them by providing them with social services and healthcare to get them stabilized. Yeah.
When I skip a question, it's only because we were so close on that topic before. It's almost the same. This one was on demographics, just full transparency as an advocate for transparency. Will you, no, that one you did too. Okay. The citizens of Toronto constitute one of the most valuable databases in the world. Do you have a plan to both protect people's data and make sure citizens get their fair share of that value?
I think this is an important conversation, and we can see that city government actually hasn't really been prepared to deal with this. I know Chloe actually has a lot of expertise in this space, but you look at what happened with Sidewalk Labs a few years ago, and we were not able to find a pathway forward with those organizations because we didn't have a data governance policy. And yet years have gone by since then, and we haven't stood that up. Government is really good at doing the same thing over and over, not so good at innovating. We need to move into the 21st century when it comes to a data policy here in the city.
Very quickly, for all of your all candidates, and a quick percentage, what percentage of your donations come from developers and/or unions? I'm just reading the questions that they put on the cards. All of you put on the cards. What do you want me to do? What percentage of your donations, answer that question how you will, but what percentage of your donations come from developers and/or unions? They want to have a sense of who maybe you might be beholden to.
So legally, none, right? But individuals can. And historically, it's been very low in my campaigns. I honestly don't know right yet, because we haven't finished the campaign, what the percentage is. But if we want to up the percentage of people perhaps involved in ratepayers associations, you can visit my website at votematlow.ca. It's really easy to donate. Thank you.
Okay, so people, it's only individuals that can donate, and people have donated right across the board, individuals of all size of donations. I'm particularly interested in those that are giving $55 because that is my number on the ballot.
I'm getting donations from working class people, so they're all tiny, and I'm really proud of it. From what I can guess, it's just like architects, construction workers. It's like everyone underneath the developer or the union.
Like everyone here, we'll have a better sense once all the filings are done. I definitely have money that have come in from people who build housing. I don't stigmatize them for building housing. I think that's important. I might have some money that's come in from people from unions, but probably not as much as other candidates. And I have lots of folks who believe in our message, fighting for affordability, community safety, unlocking the gridlock. That motivates people. They donate, and I appreciate their support.
This is the very last one, and then we'll move to a minute for closing remarks and wrap it up. And maybe again, because we started, we'll do 30 seconds each max, but for everybody, because we started on the subject of citizen engagement, and this one is particularly hot because most of these cards talk about affordable housing in some way. Should affordable housing be subject to community consultation or appeal given the current housing crisis? So this is interesting because we've started this whole conversation about how to engage different voices, but when it's a hot public policy issue and particularly a housing crisis, should affordable housing be subject to community consultation or appeal given the crisis? Let's go across. You want to start? We'll go this way. Yeah, sure. Sorry.
You know, how we're defining affordable housing is sort of important.
Okay.
But I will just, for the context here, the hardest thing I've done was stand up those 59 supportive housing units in East York. The stigmatization of the residents unfairly that were moving into the building was not good. But the consultation and eventually finding a pathway to success and making sure that that project was successful was super important. Consultation, yes. Appeal, no.
Thank you very much.
I think there's space for community workshops to work on the design and the implementation of affordable housing projects when it comes to meeting their neighbors. I think that there is a really big opportunity to work with residents association and raise their capacity for understanding what's going on, because there's been a lot of opaqueness, and this is where there's fear and there's a lot of misunderstanding about who you're inviting into your neighborhood, and most of the time it's someone like myself. So work with me and I work with you to get this done.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Absolutely. We need to have more community consultation and input and involvement. I fought Doug Ford when he took out the consultation requirements for conservation authorities. I just think, why are you silencing the voice of people who have to live within the communities and the neighborhoods in which this development will be impacted? In fact, some of the consultations that have happened or the advocacy that has happened have made projects better. Of course, there has to be a limit to that, but we need it. We need more, not less.
Last but not least, we'll go to closing remarks, which we'll do after Josh has a turn, but we'll do it the other way. Here we go. Should affordable housing be subject to community consultation / appeal or appeal given the current housing crisis?
Of course there should be consultation. But what I've found in our communities, I've never known a residents association that I've worked with that hasn't actually advocated for affordable housing to be part of any successful project. In fact, what they're saying is that not everything should be a luxury condo, that we need more affordable places to live in the city. So I would always support the voice of residents who are saying, Let's build more affordable housing for people to be able to live in this expensive city.
Okay, so we're going to go reverse order. A closing 1-minute wrap-up series of comments, and then we'll be done. I know that Jeff from FoNTRA is going to also say thank you before we walk out, so I'm going to move out of the way and over to you, all yours, starting with Josh, Mitzi, Chloe, Brad.
Well, I want to thank FoNTRA and FoSTRA and OCAD for hosting this meeting and all of you for being here this evening. I'm running to be your mayor because, as I said earlier, I know that this can be a safe and livable and affordable city, but we need to be intentional about it. It can't just be rhetoric and pandering. It has to be a plan that's paid for, that's costed, that's deliverable, that's realistic, and that's what I'm proposing. In fact, Kevin Page, who's the former Parliamentary Budget Officer of Canada, has said that my plan is doable and realistic. As your mayor, my focus will always be on the priorities of our communities, to make sure that people have an opportunity to get a job and be able to have a home, to ride the TTC without fear. I want to open libraries on Sundays. I want to open schools after hours. I want to make sure that people can get around. I want to expand transit. And I will never answer to anybody but the residents of Toronto.
So Nicole's gone, so I'm just going to change the rules on her. So I'm running for mayor, and I want you to ask yourself 3 questions, because you're going to vote on Monday, June 26th, to choose someone that will lead this city. And the city that we want is a city that works for everyone everywhere, where everyone is included. And I appreciated our conversation tonight. Ask yourself, who's been transparent? Who brings the experience that's needed for this moment? Who represents the change? Because Toronto needs a new direction when it comes to things like affordable housing, getting our city moving. And the city that we want is a city where young people can see themselves living here. And I think that's at risk today. And so on June 26th, I ask you to choose me, Mitzi Hunter, as your next mayor.
All right, thank you guys so much for being here today. Thank you for your patience. I am running for mayor because after a decade of being patient in my 20s, I can no longer wait for things to get better. As someone who has had a job since the age of 15, I know the value of getting your hands dirty and learning and failing and becoming better. And this is where I'm really trying to make a lot of you realize that the mayor alone cannot do this job. It's all of us. We have to become better stewards, better shareholders, and we need to do it together, because the truth is, for the last decade, we've been subsidizing executives, corporations, management consultants, and we have nothing to show for it. I want to get you involved because I know you have the talent and the grit to actually see this through, because you've been here this entire time. Governments rise and they fall, but residents have been here. What you need now is the financial power and the social capital to actually see these projects through, and I'm here to coach you and guide you through this process. So vote for Chloe Brown.
I just want to take a second, and if you can join me in a round of applause for all of our campaign teams, our volunteers who have stood these things up for the past 3 months, time away from their family and their friends participating in this election. I really appreciate it. All of the teams, it's been great to get to know you. My name is Brad Bradford, and I'm running for mayor because I want less talk and more action at City Hall. Torontonians are tired of waiting for housing. They're tired of waiting for transit. They're tired of waiting for a local government that takes the issues that matter in your life seriously and delivers results. 17 days ago, my wife gave birth to our second baby, new baby Bronwyn. That's exciting. My wife's a hero. But it crystallizes what's at stake for our future, what it's all about. I'm fighting for young families. I'm fighting for people who want to build a business in this city. New Canadians who are stepping off the plane at Pearson to have a new life here. And seniors who want to live in Toronto after all the contributions they've made. If you want to see action at City Hall, vote Brad Bradford on Monday. Thanks for your support.
Over to Jeff Cattell is with the Federation of North Toronto Residents Associations to wrap it up.
Wow, what a 2 hours. We would love to thank the candidates for their participation tonight. I'm in awe of their answers. I'm in awe of the questions. And thank you from our hearts. Sincere thanks. And good luck on Monday. Thank you to OCAD University for providing this fantastic venue and all your support. Hearing the security, all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. Thank you, Nicole, for doing such a great job of moderating. There was no talking over anybody. What a victory. And thank you to all the FoNTRA, the FoSTRA volunteers for the many, many hours that you have invested in contributing to the organization of this event. The one that didn't happen and the one tonight. And most important, voting for the next mayor of Toronto is a privilege, not to be wasted. So get out and vote. Good evening to all, and thank you so much for attending this important event.